Hey, and welcome to Thanks Universe. This podcast is just a way for me to share all the lessons I'm learning as I'm building my small business. We're currently at about 1 million in revenue, so we're really, really small. And I intend to grow us to at least 10 million in the next 3 to 5 years, hopefully sooner rather than later. And I wanted to share with you my journey and all the lessons I'm learning along the way. So instead of waiting for the new year, I seized the opportunity and used the new quarter to get this podcast started and to do things a little differently with my team. So every quarter, I do have our quarterly meeting. It's usually based on the traction framework. The way that it works is you lead your team through a communal exercise where we review the goals of last quarter and set next quarter's goals. I think that's where my first mistake was. I decided this time around to do something a bit different. Instead of just deciding the goals for the next quarter as a team, I took everyone's feedback, so we brainstormed together, and then I took the weekend to come up with our goals for the company, what each person would be responsible, and the KPIs and scorecard that we would track and measure every week along the way, so that we can have an idea of where we're going. Now, I was initially very nervous to bring this to my team because we had done amazing last quarter, but the things that I was about to put on their plate was about 3 times as much as what we had done last quarter. So I was really nervous thinking, you know, if they don't feel like this is doable, it's not going to be accepted and they're not going to get responsibility for it, so they're not going to take action. Lesson learned. My team was more than happy with the workload and thought it was actually smart and doable, like smart as in, realistic and all of that. And they have taken full accountability and within a week made so much progress towards our company goals and the ones specifically that they own. So, what I learned from that situation is that sometimes as the leader, it's important to get feedback and share context, but ultimately, you have to be the one who pushes the direction and the speed of the company. And I have an amazing team, but I still was abdicating from that responsibility. And I've taken it on this time, this quarter, and I'm already seeing awesome results. So let me go into some more lessons I learned this week. So the next thing I did after the quarterly meeting and reviewing our priorities was to time audit myself, to see where I was spending my time and where I should have been spending it. What I noticed is my week was very reactive, which does not surprise me, unfortunately, but I wanted to see where I was reacting. So I spent a lot more time um, giving feedback to my team, which I realized I was not doing one often enough because all the feedback that they had requested was over 24 to 48 hours old. So I was getting to them maybe 72 hours in to answer their questions. So I was becoming the bottleneck for them to even accomplish their work and their KPIs because they were waiting on me for approval and for double checks and for feedback. So that poses two problems. One, I need to give a quicker feedback loop. That is very important. And two, how do I remove myself from the feedback loop process? Right. So those are the two questions I had on my table. So the first thing I did was for this week, add in more feedback times so that the feedback loop goes faster. So whatever questions they do have, we can answer. And second is to dedicate specific time, like at least 5 to 10 hours this week to taking all the feedback that I've been giving and creating SOPs out of them. I know it sounds really simple, and I thought that I had already been doing this by creating this resource bank within our company's Monday board and just putting everything there. But what I hadn't done is create like a formalized checklist that they have to go through before they send anything to me for review, right? So, and also like creating decision making flow charts, because I realized that some of the, feedback that I had, I was automatically doing a decision making framework, which I had not articulated. So my team was just like, she's making a random decision with every customer. And it's like, no, I'm following a framework. Um, so taking that out of my head and making sure not only is it accessible to the company, but that the team is actually going through that process every time we are making decisions or dealing with customers. So that is two of my big lessons learned from my time audit this week. The next is that despite how much time I am spending on the sales part of the business, the leadership is still taking some time on my calendar. And especially with this feedback and SOP creation, there is just not enough time on my plate for sales and lead generation. So, one of my biggest bottlenecks is to find someone who can help me with sales and with lead generation and customer service. Um, and so, it's on a priority for me to find this person. So that is another thing that I decided to try out is to work with a recruiter and to make sure this recruiter was able to bring me a variety of new leads for this position, both someone who's in the industry and also someone who understands the new age of sales. The industry that I work in is very old. It's very um, not antiquated, but a lot of modern innovations, like text message marketing, is just not a thing within our industry because it's just one of those old boring businesses that just last forever. And they don't, it's such a necessity that you don't really need to put so much effort behind it. When people need it, they come to you. And that's not a good way to ramp up sales and build a business. So, how to focus on the most effective lead generation and sales tactics outbound, instead of just inbound, has been something that I have been working on with my team. And how to find that salesperson who can then take that whole process off my plate has been a learning experience in itself. Finally, I would like to get leave you guys with this third and final lesson, which is decision making. I did not realize this, but a lot of the challenges that my company and my team were facing were because I was not making a decision. Um, what I realized was the challenge is I needed to decide, do we say no to customers? Not just do we say no to like certain customers, but do we say no to customer requests? So our company is a walk-in cooler and freezer company. We have three main services and products that we do. And because it is similar to other things such as kitchen equipment, which we do not do, customers will ask us for that information and for us to sell it to them and for us to install it and these things. And it's a waste of my company's time. My team has to then go out and do research on those things, which we are able to find a better price because we're in the wholesale market, right? So it is something that we have access to, but It is not our company's core competency. So the amount of time that was just going into serving these customers with these requests and doing the research behind making the quotes instead of using our current products and services to provide quotes for our existing customers and finding new customers who align with what we sell, we were off track for about 15% of our company's time, which is a lot. So I went through and I really had trouble with this because if I say no to this, we're losing, um, at least, 30 grand a month, in just revenue, right? So it's like, how do I say no to that? So I went through Layla Hormozi's, decision-making framework, and I came to the conclusion that the worst case scenario, which is our current customers won't even buy from us because we don't sell them these auxiliary products, the likelihood of that worst case scenario is probably like 40%. So if I go ahead and say no, I'm going to obviously honor all the people that I have already quoted. But if I put a cutoff deadline and honor my company and be like, this is what we do. And then we find and focus on the clients who do need walk-in cooler and freezer services. There's plenty of people in that market that we can increase our revenue by just focusing on finding more of the type of client we want rather than spending 15% of our company's time on 30,000 a month, which is very marginal in terms of revenue for what we can make. Um, so just going through that decision-making matrix, facing my fear of what if I tank the company by making this decision? Um, and the thing is, like, if it is a big mistake and we're losing our ideal customer, and client because we're not offering these services, then I can always go back and add them back in. It's not something that is an irreversible decision, but it will allow us to focus on getting our ideal client. And I think that that decision, when I've made it, has been hard and it is scary, but I think that it's going to pay dividends in the coming weeks. So, I look forward to seeing you next week when I bring you my lessons learned from the next week in business. And until then, thank you.